Today's lesson is Module 5, Lesson 2, the area of right triangles. And in today's lesson, we're going to start off with an exploratory challenge. And you're going to need this handout here that has some boxes with X on it. And it says, use the shapes labeled with X to predict the formula needed to calculate the area of the right triangle. Explain your prediction. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at this rectangle shape here. And I can calculate the area of this rectangular shape by doing area equals base times height. We learned that in yesterday's lesson. So if I look at the base of this shape, I can see it's 1, 2, 3. So I will substitute in for my base 3 units. And then for my height, I can see it's 1, 2 units tall. So times 2 units. I'm going to combine my like terms by multiplying 3 times 2, which gives me 6. And then units and units equals units squared. Now they want me to figure out if I can use this to determine the area of these two right triangles up here. And what they did was they showed us that they gave me that shape 2 times. This is the shape and this is the shape from the bottom. So what I'm going to actually do is I'm going to cut this out. And I'm going to see if there's a way for me to use that other shape in order to determine what the area of a right triangle is, if I can come up with a formula for that. So here's my shape that I started off with that I said was 6 units. And now I'm cutting out this right triangle. And I'm going to put it right on top of that other one. Then I'm going to cut out this other one because they gave me 2. Because it looks like that one is about half. So if I have another one, this other triangle that they gave me, I'm going to put it on here. I'm going to see what happens. So it looks like 2 halves are making this one complete. So if I take one off, then it looks like my right triangle is half of what my rectangle was. So I'm going to put that down as my formula, that I think it will be half of the base times the height. So I'm going to see if this was half of this, and this was 6, then I would have to do 1/2 of my base, which was 3 units, times 2 units. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to combine these together. So it will be 1/2 times 6 And when I'm multiplying a fraction times a whole number, 1/2 times 6. Remember, I put my whole number over 1. So 6 times 1 is 6. 2 times 1 is 2. That gives me an improper fraction, which means I have to divide. So 6 divided by 2 is 3. I can skip this whole thing by just knowing if I have to multiply by half, I can just simply go on over and divide by 2. But just for showing you the steps of that, I went ahead and included it. So 1/2 times 6 is 3, and then I have units squared. Next, it says, use the shapes labeled with a Y to determine the formula you discovered is correct. Okay, so now I need this other one here. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to calculate. So I have to figure out my area of Y first. So area, remember, is base times height. So my base is 1, 2, 3 units. 3 units times my height, which is 1, 2, 3 units. So my area is 3 times 3, which is 9 units squared. And if I went back and counted all the squares, you would see that there were 9 squares. Now I'm going to check it with this right triangle that's up here. And I'm going to put it over the top. And it looks like it takes up about half. I could flip it over and see that if when I flip it over it goes to the other half. I can also count up these and say 1, 2, 3. This is a half, this is a half, and this is a half. These two halves together are going to make a whole. So 1, 2, 3, 4.5 is what my prediction is. So what I'm going to see is if I do area equals 1/2 the base times the height. So area equals 1/2. We said this was 3 units. So times 3 units times 3 units. I combine these together, so its area equals 1/2 times 9. If you remember back in the example I did above, I said anytime we multiply something by 1/2, we can skip that step and actually just divide that by 2. So I will do 9 divided by 2. How many 2's are in 9? There are 4. And 4 times 2 is 8. I subtract, I have 1 left over. Can add in decimal and bring that down. So 2 goes into 10 5 times. So my answer is 4.5 units. 4.5 units squared. So did my formula for the triangle match the formula for the x? Yes. It says, if so, do you believe you have the correct formula? Yes, because the right triangle is half of the rectangle. What was the area of that triangle? It was 4.5 units squared. Now, before we go on, we're going to go ahead and put this formula in our notebook so that we have that for an example to look back on. So go ahead and take out your notebook, and I've already gotten mine started. And we're going to label it Module 5, Lesson 2, the area of right triangles. I give you the definition of a right triangle as a shape with 3 sides and one angle is 90 degrees. Remember, the little box in the corner indicates to you that that angle is equal to 90 degrees. So sometimes those triangles are drawn different directions, and so that's why I gave you a couple different images for that. We discovered that the formula is 1/2 base times the height, and we can abbreviate it as this way. So I want you to go ahead and draw a triangle. We will label it as this is the base and this is the height. Our base and height will always be perpendicular to each other. So they will always touch each other in some fashion to create that 90-degree angle. That's what makes that the base and the height. So if I have a triangle, a right triangle, that is, a right triangle, and the base is 2 centimeters, and the height is 4 centimeters, I would find the area of this triangle as area equals 1/2 base times height, 1/2 base times height. I'm going to substitute in the 2 centimeters for my base and the 4 centimeters for my height. And then I'm going to multiply. The first thing I'm going to do is combine these terms together. So area equals 1/2 times, then 2 times 4 is 8. Then remember, anytime I'm multiplying something by half, I can actually divide it by 2, especially if it's a whole number or a decimal. If it's a fraction, then you'll want to go ahead and do the multiplication. So now I'm going to see how many 2's go into 8. There are 4 2's in 8. So now I have area equals 4, and then I have centimeter and centimeters, indicating that I have centimeters squared. And that is my final answer. Now we're going to go on and go back to the book. And in your student book, we have a couple of practice problems. It says, calculate the area of each triangle below. Each figure is not drawn to scale. So they tell you that because this first one, the height is 8 foot and the base is 15 foot. So what I want you to do is I want you to work through problems 1 through 4. And then I want you to come back and check your answers. Feel free to pause and rewind this video as often as you need to. You can work through this exercise with a partner if you need to. Please make sure you're staying on task and accomplishing the practice that's needed. And then we will come back and talk about these answers. So go ahead and hit pause. Okay, we're going to go ahead and check the work now. For number 1, you should have written out the formula as 1/2 base times height. Your base is 15. Your height is 8. I know that because these two lines are perpendicular to each other and they have the right angle indicator there. This other number is just telling you the length of that side. You don't need it. So you should have done 1/2 times 15 foot times 8 foot. 15 times 8 is 120. 1/2 times 120 is the same as dividing 120 by 2 and gotten 60 feet. And I don't care if you use a calculator on today's work, that's fine. For number 2, you should have used 11 4/10 and 17 7/10. 1/2 times 11 4/10 centimeters times 17 7/10 centimeters. When you multiply 11 4/10 and 17 7/10, you get 201 78/100. Divide that by 2, and you get 186 centimeters squared. On to the next one. My base is 6, my height is 8, so they turn this triangle around, so it's kind of like if you swung your paper around, you would be able to see base and height. They are perpendicular to each other. So I'm doing 1/2 times 6 inches times 8 inches. I'm going to multiply the 6 and the 8 together first, and I get 48. Oh, it looks like I left that step out. 1 equals 1/2 times 48. I divide the 48 by 2, and that gives me 24 inches squared for inches and inches. On to the next one. This time they laid it on its side, but it doesn't matter which one. Commutative property of multiplication says I can multiply in any order. So area equals 1/2 base times height. So area equals 1/2 times 5 3/5 times 8 2/3. So the first thing I'm going to do is I turned my mixed numbers into improper fractions, which gave me 28/5 times 26/3. I multiplied that together and got 728/15. Then I multiplied 728/15 by 1/2, which is this step here. And I got 728/30. Then I divided 728 by 30. And that gave me 24 4/15 after I reduced. If you left it as 728/30, I would not mark that wrong, but I want you to get in the practice of putting it back into a mixed number. If it starts with a mixed number, then let's try to get back in the practice of putting it back into a mixed number. Now I want you to go ahead and take a look at number 5, and we will do number 5 together. So we will start off with looking for our base and height. So I'm going to start off with the formula. Area equals 1/2 base times height. So area equals 1/2. I'm going to plug in for my base 21 4/10 kilometers times 32 7/10 kilometers. I'm going to combine like terms first. So I'm going to multiply 21 4/10 times 32 7/10. 7 and 4 is 28. Regroup my 2. 7 and 1 is 7 plus 2 is 9. 7 and 2 is 14. Put in my placeholder because now I'm going to multiply for my tens place. So my answer needs to start in my, actually this is my ones place because this was my tenths place. So 2 times 4 is 8. 2 times 1 is 2. 2 times 2 is 4. Put in my 2 placeholders because now I'm multiplying for my tens place. 3 times 4 is 12. Regroup my 1. 3 times 1 is 3 plus 1 more is 4. And 3 times 2 is 6. Now I need to add all of this together. 8, 17, 9, 9, 6. I have 2 numbers behind decimal, so I need 2 numbers behind a decimal. So my answer is 699.78. So now I need half of that. So now I'm going to do 699.78 divided by 2. There are 3 2s and 6. Bring down my 9 for 4. Bring down my 9. There are 9. Bring down my 7. Put my decimal up there. Be 8. 9. So my answer is area equals 349.89. And I have kilometers and kilometers. So kilometers squared. So now I want you to take a look at number 6. Number 6 says, Mr. Jones told his students that they each needed half of a piece of paper. Calvin cut his piece of paper horizontally. Horizontally means across from left to right. And Matthew cut his paper diagonally. So you can see here where Matthew cut his paper diagonally. Which student has the larger area on his piece of paper? And explain. Well, we did that exploratory challenge at the beginning of class, if you remember, where we said that when we have a piece of paper, if it's shaped like a rectangle, remember we can cut it on the diagonal and it does give us half. So if it's half of the area, this would still be half of the area. So it would indicate that both students have the same area. Calvin cut his paper in half. That means the area was cut in half. We also know Matthew's paper is half of the original area. Because two right triangles are equal to one rectangle. Next it says, Ben requested that the rectangular stage be split into 2 equal sections for the upcoming school play. So there's a rectangular stage. The only instruction he gave was he needed the area of each section to be half of the original size. If Ben wants the stage to be split into 2 right triangles, did he provide enough information? So let's think of all the ways we can split a rectangle in half. So from our example above, we know that it can be cut horizontally. And from our exploratory challenge, we also know that it can be cut diagonally. But a rectangle can also be cut vertically. So did he give enough information? We're going to say no, because a rectangle can be cut 3 different ways to get 2 equal parts. And finally, on this last one that I would like for us to do together, it says the area of a right triangle is 6 2200 square inches. And its base is 3 1100 inches. Write an equation that relates the area to the height and solve the equation. Well, I know that area equals 1/2 base times height. And in the problem, it says that the area is 6 2200. So I'm going to replace this area with 6.22 inches squared. I'm going to keep my 1/2. It says the base is 3.11 inches. And the height is what I don't know. So I'm going to leave that as h. So then the very first thing that I need to do is I need to get this h all by itself. So first I have to combine these two. So what I'm going to do is multiply 1/2 by 3.11, which is the same as dividing 3 1100 by 2. How many 2's are in 3? 1. Subtract. Put my decimal up. Bring my 1 down. There are 5 2's and 10. Whoops. I brought down a 0 instead of a 1. Subtract. Bring down my next one. There are 5. I keep bringing down 0's instead of 1. Sorry about that, guys. Then 5 times 2 is 10. My brain is working faster than my hand. Since I still have 1, I need to add in a 0, bring it down, and then 5. Finally, I get to 0 remainder. So now this becomes 1.555 times h. And this over here has not changed. So now what I need to do is get this all by itself. I have to isolate that variable. So I have to use my inverse operation. So my opposite operation of times is division. So I'm going to divide this side by 1.55 and this side by 1.555. This cancels out, leaving me only with h. But now I have to do this division. So remember, to divide with decimals, I need to get this to a whole number. So I'm going to move this 3 spaces. 1, 2, 3. Which means I also have to move this 3 spaces. 1, 2, 3. So I have to add in a 0 and a decimal. So now I have to figure out how many 1,555 can go into 6,220. Well, I know that this, if I cover up these last two, that makes me think of 15. And if I cover up these last two, that makes me think of 60. How many 15s go into 60? I'm using mental math to figure out that there are 4. So now I'm going to do a guess and check. So I'm going to do 1,555 times 4 just to check. 4 times 5 is 20. Regroup my 2. 4 times 5 is 20 plus 2 gives me 22. 4 times 5, or regroup my 2. 4 times 5 is 20 plus 2 gives me 22. Regroup my 2. 4 times 1 is 4 plus 2 more is 6. That was a perfect guess. So 4 times 1,555 is 6,220. So my h equals 4. So then I say the height is 4 inches. Today's assignment on the exit ticket, you are going to, for number 1, calculate the area of this triangle here. For number 2, you'll need to read it and answer the question based on the image that is here that is provided for you. On the back, you are doing 1 through 6. If you don't have enough room, feel free to add another piece of paper. So 1 through 5 is calculating the area of a triangle, and number 6, they have you comparing 2 rugs, and I want you to make sure that you're answering the question completely because it asks you to explain. Again, if you don't have enough space, feel free to use a separate sheet of paper. If you have any questions, you can pause and rewind this video as often as you'd like, and you can also come see me. Remember, calculators are permitted. We are practicing using the formula 1/2 base times height today, not practicing computation.